Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Grace,
Hi, I'm Carmela, and welcome to the Worthy Woman podcast.
the place where we don't give you your worth, but we can help you find it. That actually went smooth.
Yeah, that was good. Episode 2. Wow.
It's been quick.
Very.
Like we've hit the ground running.
Yeah. I'm so excited. Our first episode was incredible. I felt so good about it.
Yeah, me too. I feel like this is a really good expression and basically a glimpse into like our everyday conversations.
Yeah.
It's just like more of like a aesthetic stage that we're talking, but these are our normal conversations.
Yeah. For the last 5 years too.
Yeah, for the last 5 years, whenever we have sleepovers or anything, we're just talking about philosophy like
All night.
So yeah, I'm really excited that we get to share this with everybody, and that you actually get to be a part of our sleepover. You get to be a part of our life and conversation.
Inside Carmela and Grace's mind.
Yes, this is literally a glimpse into our mind.
Grace, why don't you share with them what we're talking about today?
Well, today we are talking about the problem of evil. You may not have heard of the title so much as what it actually is. So, Carmela, what is the problem of evil?
Well, let me open up my notes because I did not do that.
We're also in like an unserious, goofy mood, so
Bear with us.
yeah, bear with us. I hope we can get this out like how we want to. So,
yeah. Okay. The problem of evil. A philosophical idea that God is all powerful, God is all good, and evil exists. So therefore, God cannot exist if evil exists at the same time. So we want to talk about that and how it's false, how it's a misconception and a false idea, and what we think about it.
yeah, no, exactly. The problem of evil is, this is basically the atheist question. It's the atheist rebuttal, justification. This is what all of basically atheism is based upon, and it's the biggest argument for Christianity, against Christianity. So, if God is good and omnipotent, which means he is all powerful, and there's evil in the world, how can God exist? So I guess I just remember in my philosophy class, in my basic philosophy class, we went over this obviously because it's very important. And like every atheist thinks this, even if, once again, it's not like people get this somewhere else, right? It's not like they look it up. Here's an atheist justification. Like, no. They've experienced evil in their lives, as everyone has. They've experienced suffering or seen it. And so they think, well, if God is good, if God is all powerful, then how come I'm experiencing that suffering?
Yeah.
And I remember in my philosophy class, there's a lot of ways to answer it, I guess. But I think that is the wrong way to approach it. And I think that's the wrong way to think about the problem of evil, is to give an answer for it. I think that it's at the base of the premise, at the base of the argument. It's a false misconception.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that the people that support this claim, such as atheists, they are in a way projecting their faults and their pain onto God, a God that they don't even know. God can be all loving and all powerful with evil existing. They can coexist, and that is where people go wrong, is that people view it as, well, this traditional God defined cannot be compatible with evil in this world. And so either evil doesn't exist, which that's false. It does, and it always will, here on earth. So how can God be real? And I mean, we see it back, obviously, just in the garden where just everything started.
So atheists get wrong the character of God. They limit him to only all loving and all powerful. So this is the God they're thinking about. And of course, maybe with that idea, a God who is only all loving, all powerful, well, of course, why would he allow suffering, right? But that's not the God of the Bible. He is not limited to being all loving and all powerful. Yes, those are two characteristics of his essence, right? But that's not all.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that God is not limited to anything. And as we know, God is Yahweh. That's not his character. Nothing is impossible. He is the essence of good. He is the essence of powerful. And he's also the essence of just. And I think that's where they go wrong, is that they don't know who God is and know that, yes, he's all loving and goodness only comes from him, but also that he is just and that he also gives us free will. So,
yeah, of course. And also to try and comprehend the entire character of God, like in a couple words is just ridiculous. I mean, like seriously. Yeah, he's not only all loving and all powerful, he's just, he's holy, right? He's perfect, set apart, slow to anger. That's the God of the Bible, right? And so when atheists are talking about Yahweh, the God of the Bible, you have to subscribe to what he is then and who he is. You can't just make that up, right? And we will dive deeper into that a little bit later about this made up God that atheists make up. But I think it'd be really beneficial to actually define evil because, as we were talking about this, it's like, well, especially Western culture, we just have this presupposition of good and evil, that good and evil exist in a yin yang and that they're constantly at battle, right? Good is God, evil is Satan. And they've always been at odds with each other and they always will be, right? And they're equal, right? They're equal opposites on an equilibrium. And that is absolutely, I would say, like demonic. It's a bad idea, right?
Yeah, I would definitely say that's a demonic idea because we see it also in other religions that we would call demonic as Christians. So the definition of evil is something that is perverted, something that is a perversion of what was once good. And so we see that God is all powerful. He has the ability to do all things. We see that he is all good. He's perfectly good, merciful, and all loving. And then we see evil, the corruption, the perversion of what was good. And so I understand where people can get lost and like, how can these both coexist? But that is the definition. That's where they fundamentally get it wrong, is the root of it. They don't know what evil is. And I used to say lack. So things that are evil are lacking good. And that's where I was wrong. It's not a lack of goodness. It's not this like measure, like bar graph thing where it's like, oh, as something becomes evil, like the good is getting less. No, that's not what it is. It is something that is from God, because everything from God and made from God is good, and evil comes and perverts it, twists it. And so therefore those things can coexist, because evil goodness wasn't made. God wasn't created. Goodness comes from something that was not created. Evil is the origin of Satan, and Satan was created. So good. Therefore, they're not the same.
Yeah. Exactly. So this is Augustine's idea, is that evil is a privation of good. It's not a thing of itself, right? So imagine goodness is something that maybe you can grab like a pen. Like goodness, let's say, is this pen, right? Well, there isn't in this scenario, there isn't a pen also that is bad, right? Bad, evil. That's not how it works, right? It's that goodness is and always was, right? And evil came in and latched on to what was good and perverted it, right? So it's not a thing of itself.
Yeah, and I think that's where that whole like yin and yang, like constant at battle, like idea can be misconstrued, is because in people's minds they think, talking about the pen, it's like, okay, this good pen was created and then that bad pen was created. It, like in their mind it's like, oh, Satan like
Is of itself.
yes, he like rose from hell. Like, no, that's not what happened. He was created.
Or that heaven and hell have always no. There was a time where goodness only existed. Okay? And so if you can understand that, then you can understand this true idea that evil is a privation of good. And this is also seen with Lucifer, right? Like you said, he was created good. He was an angel of the arts of music. And then he perverted his good gift, right? He perverted the goodness. And that's where the origin of sin is, right? We see the fall of man, and that's where man fell, but that's not the origin of sin. The origin of sin is with Satan, right? When he fell by his own will, right? So, for example, because I know this is, it's confusing, right? When you're just like talking about it, but when you can see different examples, like in real life, it makes a lot of sense. So I would say, for example, this idea of evil being a privation of good is like, well, look at alcoholism, right? It's not that alcohol in of itself is bad or evil, right? Right? So, because also we see Jesus making water into wine. So how can alcohol be inherently evil then, right? How can the actual alcohol in of itself be evil? No. It's, and nobody would say that, by the way. Nobody would say that this material, alcohol, is evil, right? It's when you pervert it that it becomes sin and it becomes evil, right? And you don't have to be a Christian to know that. I mean, it's like nobody supports alcoholism. That's an addiction, right? And it's bad because of this and that. But something is good, right? A lot of things are good inherently. Actually, all of creation is good inherently because that's how it was created. But evil is when it perverts a good thing. And you can see that. You can see, just think in your mind, think of any evil that exists that you've, been a part of or like witnessed. It's like, it's a perversion of something that was good. Well, so now what you were saying is that the misconception with the problem of evil is that evil can't exist with a good God. Or evil can't exist in the world with a good God being the creator. And that's wrong.
That's wrong. Yeah, it's just totally false. And that's why we say this made up God. Because truly, if you know who God is, know his character, evil and a good God can't exist because evil does not come from God.
Yeah, I think maybe the word coexisting isn't right, just because there once was a time where good existed without evil. So it's not that evil has eternally existed. It's not. And it won't, right? When Jesus redeems, or, when Jesus comes back, it's like, So, it's the idea that the atheist gets the character of God wrong, okay? So, the God of the Bible, and this is what the atheist is talking about with the problem of evil. So, the God of the Bible is Yahweh. That's his name that he self-proclaims. I am when I am, right? I am who I am. And so, that's his name, okay? Right? That's something to understand that the atheist doesn't even know, okay? So, even in that small sense, the atheist does not understand who God is when they're talking about it. But in the Orthodox Church, they understand God's character, who is God, by differentiating into two categories. One is essence, and then the other is energies. So with essence, they would say that God's inner being is completely unknowable and transcendent, and no one can comprehend. And so I think that makes a lot of sense in this aspect, because if you're trying to understand God as a whole, saying, you know, how can there be a God if evil exists? It's right. It's like, well, you don't, by the way, you don't even know what suffering will do in the long run. No human knows right now what the suffering they're going through right now will turn out to be in the future, right? I mean, how many times have you gone through something that's been really hard, and in the moment you thought it was suffering just because, you know, of a punishment or whatever, right? But then in retrospect, it's like, oh wow, no, I went through that because of this, and I'm so glad I went through it, right? And so it's like, the problem of evil is a presumption that you are all-knowing, and you're not. You don't know if the sun is going to rise tomorrow. You don't know with certainty anything, right? I mean, you know that you exist, right? That's something you can be certain about pretty much. But for pretty much everything else, you don't know. And so for the atheist to say, you know, to be on like this pedestal and like try to view God from a God perspective, an all-knowing perspective, it's like, that just doesn't make any sense. Like it contradicts itself. So this essence idea that there's some parts of God that a human right now will never understand. And I think that's right. And I think that's true, because that, you know, that is a question. Well, you know, why is there evil, right? Well, I can't give you an answer for that. I mean, I wasn't here at the beginning of the earth. I don't know. But one day you'll know, and that's okay, right? And then there's energies. So that is how God operates in the world, and that's how we can see the character of God. So love, mercy, holiness, justice, infinites, right? And so to limit God's character to all loving and all powerful is to create another God.
Yeah, I think creating this made-up God, and I feel like every individual has their own made-up God. They're all different. Creating that in your mind is very dangerous. It can just lead to so many things. I think people do this because it is a coping mechanism for their own choices, for their own hurt, for their own pain and suffering that you don't want to take responsibility for. Because most of the time, not all the time, your own suffering and your own pain and your own desires for more is because of your own decisions and your own choices. And I mean, we see that in the garden. It's like God gave Adam and Eve free will, because I mean, you can't love somebody fully without free will. And so that's why God granted us that. And because he loves us so much, he wants to be loved as much back. So we're not robots to God. And we see it back in the garden, how Adam and Eve were manipulated. Satan perverted what was good to Adam and Eve and made them, think differently about who God is. They made up God in their own minds. And that is what's happening. And that's what's dangerous, because look at where it led to. It led to death and suffering and evil and hurt. And it's purely because something was perverted. What was good and twisted and lied. Satan took God's characters and twisted it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying was a great insight, that in the garden, Satan perverted the command of God. And that's where the fall of man happened. But you can see that as well in the atheist, because the atheist believes in a different God than the God of the Bible. And then that creates a disbelief in God, right? So there's nothing new under the sun. Satan has no new tricks, right? He does what he has always done, and that is to pervert and confuse and deceive. And wow, and then it's also the atheists, how many atheists do you know turned Christian once they learned more about God, right? It's it's crazy. And also, this is why, we wouldn't say that atheists are very have a lot of good points, right? It's that you were very hurt, and you don't want to believe in God. It's not that you have a lack of belief, right? It's that you don't believe. It's that you don't want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, it's another choice. Mm-hmm. It's another decision that you are making.
Yes, and can we talk about this? Because the definition of atheism is a lack of belief in God. It's not a disbelief. And you talk to any atheist who's a very heartfelt atheist, is that they will say it's not a disbelief, it's a lack of belief. But like you just said, no, because you do have a choice, and that choice is to either believe or disbelieve. But there's no possible way you could have a lack of belief.
Yeah. Just a little context of what I was talking about before. Obviously, Genesis 3, and we talked about this a lot in our last episode, so sorry, that's just so good. It's Genesis is one of my favorite books in the Bible. So, I'm not going to read the scripture. You guys can go read Genesis 3, but I wrote notes when I was reading one time. And Satan said to Eve, did God actually say that? And so first it's placing doubt. And then Eve responds with, well, we may not eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said you should not eat from the fruit of the tree that's in the midst of the garden. And she's adding.
It's not that, and this is the thing, is that Satan didn't come up with this entire lie. Yeah. Satan yeah. Didn't say, oh, God never said that to Adam. God never spoke to Adam, right? Because that'd be a complete lie. But that's the thing, is that it's not a thing of itself. It's not something that he created. He took the truth, right?
Yeah.
He took the truth and he added.
Mm-hmm. So it's not only that this made up God that atheists will make up, that God's limited, it also can be adding
to, or taking away from.
Yeah. So yeah, we obviously just see Satan placing doubt, which is perversion of it, placing doubt into Eve's mind, and then we see Eve making up this scenario. We see Eve making up things, this made up God. We see it coming to life in Eve's mind, that she is limiting God and adding to what he actually said to her. So that's crazy. But also, like, I just wanted to say this because I wrote this down. I'm like, wow, like, this just really ties into what we're talking about. I wrote down on the bottom of my Bible. So just let this sit and resonate with you real quick. To walk away from the source of life is to do something unprofitable for you, which leads to a state of delusion.
Oh, where'd you get that?
I wrote that down when I was reading this.
Oh, say it again.
To walk away from the source of life is to do something unprofitable for you, and it leads to a state of delusion. So I think that's, when I was reading Genesis 3, that's what I got the gist of it.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think that's the fall of the problem of evil, is that once you establish that, everything else crumbles. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, the God you're talking about is not the God of the Bible. So the entire argument falls then, right? Is because we're not even talking about Yahweh anymore.
Yep.
I also wanted to bring up scripture because this verse always comes to my mind when I think about the character of God, right? Or otherwise, the energies of God and the way that he shows himself to us, right? And this is in Exodus 34, verse 6. Yahweh passed before him, Moses, and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. So I feel like what the atheist does is maybe they would see like the beginning of that verse and be like, oh, God is all loving and all powerful, but then forget about everything else, because God literally just self-proclaimed. He also juxtaposes himself, because he says at first all of these maybe loving characteristics, right? But then he juxtaposes and says, but who will by no means clear the guilty, right? And so that's where that justice is. And it's like, well, he's like, what do you mean all powerful, all loving? Like, what does that even mean? What do you mean all loving? Like, what does the atheist think all loving even means? Like, seriously though, try to answer that as an atheist. What do you think all loving means? And when you see horrible things going on earth, like, what does that look like? What does an all loving, that's it, God do to maybe somebody who's committing a crime? Like, seriously, because then it's if he's all loving, then he has to be all loving to this person too, and then to the victim. And so it's like, well, no, that's why the God of the Bible, he's just and he's all loving though. Yeah. Right? So in his essence, we can't understand how maybe that can exist, but it does, right? And so maybe he'll have the justice on the criminal, right? Yeah. And still, you know what I mean? So it's like, the atheist, what do you even mean by all loving? What does that even look like? What would an atheist in their mind have a perfect ideal world look like? Because I can guarantee you that the world they're like thinking of, it that's not even loving. Yeah. Right?
I mean, what would a world even look like if the atheists got to create one?
Well, what would the world look like if the atheists got to create the ideal God that they would want?
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think this leads us into our last point, is that atheism is Satanism. Yeah. It's that, right? It's that the atheist, like you just asked, what would the ideal God be for an atheist? It's themselves. Yeah. That's the ideal God, and they already do that. Yeah. They already worship their ideal God, which is themselves. Yeah. Because they, in their minds, are the judge, right? Mm-hmm. That's why you ask an atheist about morality, and it's like, well, how I feel, and I go off my gut, right? Which there's some truth to that, but that's not it.
Yeah.
And so you submit yourself to the highest authority, which is you.
Their argument just completely crumbles because realistically, what do you mean by you want this all-loving God and everyone to be accepted, no one to be condemned, to be punished for their actions, to take any sort of responsibility, because that's how no one lives their life. Let's be honest. The atheists do not live their life like that. They live a moral life most of the time. They have this sense of morality that they claim to deny that God has given us. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you talking about? Imagine living in another country with absolutely no rules. Absolutely no rules. Imagine the president of the United States, hypothetically, is like just an all-loving president. An all-loving president. You guys are free to do whatever. I accept whatever you guys do.
No consequences,
Yeah.
no punishments, because
Nothing.
that's not loving.
Yeah, it's not. And I mean, what mayhem would be happening?
Anarchy.
Yeah, the chaos.
And then that's what you see, though, is because that's already happened, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm saying, is that I don't think that the atheist has a valid argument. Yeah. Because logic, it doesn't line up like that. The atheists, they're a cope.
Who wouldn't want a God that's all just?
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me you want a president that you want to be just? He's man. He has a death date. Like, he's going to die. You don't want the highest power, the creator of your soul, that means more than just your body that will fleet. And you don't want the highest power and control of absolutely everything to be just? That's nonsense. That's crazy. That's crazy talk.
No, it is crazy. And that's what I'm saying, is that we just dissected in that hypothetical, right? We considered the atheist view, and it literally does not line up with logic, right? So you might have been at awe or very surprised when I said that atheism is Satanism. But so yeah, let's dive into that, because that's like a crazy statement, right? What do you think of when you think of Satanism?
How can you put Satanism in 3 words? I got one.
What?
Worship of self. When I was a young girl and I would think of Satanism, I would think of like very like gory, like scary stuff. Like they are in like deep sewers with the Ninja Turtles, like doing rituals and like, you know, like worshiping like Satan himself. Like, yeah, I guess that's what I think of. Something very scary and dark.
Right, exactly. And that's an aspect of it, like, you know, with the high priestess and, you know, everything that does exist. But for like the regular person who maybe, you know, doesn't do all that, like if you just met a Satanist on the street, it's like, no, they don't do that. Satanism is a group that follows beliefs based on Satan. Let's take a look at Satan then. So Satan fell from being with God because he wanted to be like God. He wanted to worship for himself. You meet a Satanist and they'll, you know, kind of be nonchalant, right? I mean, I've met Satanists before at like metal concerts. I'm not kidding. Yeah. And it's like, they're not, they're not like, I'm going to like eat you. Like, no. Yeah. Right? They're like, do what you want, dude. Like, however you like, right? That's what the Satanist is. But what does that sound like? Right? What does that sound like? Now let's look at atheism as a lack of belief in God, so a disbelief in God. But one has to believe in something, right? And that is at least themselves. You at least believe you exist, right? Philosophically, you at least believe you exist. So where does that leave the atheist? The atheist believes the highest being that exists is itself, is you. And that's what Satanism is, right? And so we see this overlining, this all of these similarities between atheism and Satanism. Worship of self is Satanism, and worship of self is atheism. So I think that for the worthy woman, so you, all of our friends, right, our community, us, the worthy woman, you can take a look at all of the things that we discussed, and I hope that there was, something new that you learned, or something that really stuck out to you and made sense, that maybe put like all your dots connected for like the thing you're going through right now. But knowledge is very, very important. I just thought of this, but my professor 2 semesters ago, he was great, loved him, like he was incredible, and he really made a lasting impression. He was my philosophy professor, and he was discussing, we had a section of what is knowledge, okay? So we're going over that, and he says, well, knowledge, first of all, why this is even important to talk about is that knowledge is very important to have because it will keep you stable in basically the world. It will keep you stable when there's anxiety, right? When there's misinformation, there's lies thrown at you. Your knowledge is what keeps you on the right path. So like, he gave an example. Well, if let's say you're going down to, if you're going down to the grocery store right by your house, right? And you know exactly where it is, you know exactly how to get there, you know when to take a right, when to take a left, what street to turn on. So you know everything. You know that in your mind, right? But for whatever reason, you put on your GPS and it's leading you a different way. So what's very important about that is that your knowledge, right? Because if you didn't have your knowledge, you'd be, led to believe this authority or whatever. And then what if it leads you to somewhere like dangerous, right? What if it got it wrong and your knowledge was right? So in that way, knowledge is very, very important because it's true, right? And it will keep you stable and it will keep you strong. So for the worthy woman, we need to be strong in our faith. We need to be strong in what we know. Because if you know something to be true and you're convicted of that, you can't be swayed. So like the knowledge of this, right? The problem of evil, the atheist argument, you will, in your life, you will be thrown with just suffering, right? You will experience suffering, even if you're a Christian. I think more if you're a Christian, you'll experience suffering. And so if you know the word, right? For example, if you know who God is, we just read who God self-proclaimed him to be. If you know that, if you memorized it, then in your anxiety, then in your suffering where Satan's tempting you and confusing you that God is this, whatever, you won't be swayed by that and you won't be deceived because you have memorized the words on this page, right? And so your knowledge is very, very important. You need to know things and you need to know truth. That's why this is important. It's not, of course we're interested in theology and philosophy, but no, you need to know this. If you're a person, if you're a human, you need to know this.
Mm-hmm. I think we should also remember that we will not know everything that God knows. We don't have the capacity to absolutely know everything about everything in our lifespan here on earth. And so I think it's like leading with what Grace said. It's important to have knowledge because we have been given so many resources, and so that should be the basis of your knowledge. You should utilize all the resources that you are given to by God. Your Bible, you should know what's in here. You should know the God that created you. You should read. We have so many books, so many great philosophers and theologians and authors even that has given us resources to grow in our knowledge. And so, yes, we might not know absolutely everything, but are you using all the resources that you're given? So I think it's important. We're not saying being the smartest, being as smart as God is what you need to strive for. No, but we know that we're not using.
Yeah, and then it's like, what if you've read something in the Bible, or maybe you haven't, and you go on TikTok and somebody is like twisting it, and you believe it because, well, they're talking about like God, but what if they're twisting it? And what if they're saying something that's false? And so if you believe that, once again, you're falling into that perversion, that distortion of what is good. And so that's why Adam, right? Maybe we could say that Adam didn't know what God said. No. Because if he did know, he would realize that Satan was deceiving him, right? Yeah. So it's that type of a thing. We are all subject to this spiritual war that has been happening for a long time and is happening right now. So you literally, for your survival, for your own good, for your spiritual survival, you have to know God. Mm-hmm. And you can do it, right? It's right here. It's on your phone. You just have to read it. Just memorize. Like, how good is memorizing verses, right?
Matthew 11:28 over myself, because it just reminds me that God is gentle and lowly, and that we can come to him with absolutely everything, and he gives our souls rest in times of suffering or anxiety or weariness. So yeah.
All right, well, I think that was a really good episode. In the future, we want to talk more about maybe something personal to you, or something that our audience, our girls, are struggling with. So comment.
Yeah, let us know what you guys want to hear from us. We are full of thoughts, trust.
anything you can say, anything that you want to say, we will talk about. I mean, if you commented that red plus yellow equals orange, we would talk about that forever. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Make sure to subscribe and comment what you would love to hear from us.
Thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in. We just love you guys so much, and we are here for you always. We're so excited to just keep filming, keep talking. Please comment what you want to hear, because we're not sure what our audience wants. We're here for you guys, and here to grow and learn with you as well. So thank you again. We will see you next Monday. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Thank you guys. Bye. Maybe I should say thank you. I'm like on like a stage. Elvis. I feel like thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let me redo that. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Bye.